Good afternoon. Today we will be studying about mental status examination. Myself, Dr. Sanjeevani Panigre, Assistant Professor in Department of Psychiatry. So this is the overview of what all we will be covering today. Mental status examination of a psychiatric patient has the following components: appearance and behavior, psychomotor activity, speech, mood, affect, perception, thought, attention, sustained attention, concentration, memory, intelligence, judgment, and insight. First is appearance and behavior. It has the following parts: attitude, general appearance and grooming, facial expression, posture, gait and carriage, body build, and rapport. So we'll go through each one of this. Attitude. Attitude is nothing but how the patient is behaving with you. Like, is he cooperative? He or she, is he cooperative? Are they friendly, trustful? Is there a purpose to the purposefulness? Is there? Are they attentive? Are they interested? Are they seductive? Are they hostile? Are they contentious, playful, defensive, or guarded? There are many other attitudes. I have just listed a few. And then general appearance and grooming. When the patient is walking in, inside the OPD or in the ward, when you are walking towards the patient or the patient is walking towards you, the mental status examination starts around that time. You first notice how the patient is looking. What is the apparent age? I mean, the patient will say his or her age, but how does he or she look? What is the apparent age? Is there any obvious physical stigmata which may, indicate towards some underlying disorder? What is the general state of physical health and overt emotional display? Like, is he too emotional? Is he crying? Is he laughing? How is he appearing? And also grooming. Grooming means, is the patient, how is he dressed? How are the clothes? Are they appropriate to the season? A psychotic patient may not be wearing, appropriate clothes. So are they appropriate to the season? Are they clean and good? And is the patient overly conscious about his or her appearance, or is he normal? How are the hair? How are the nails? Like in a grossly psychotic patient, you'll see that they are not dressed properly. They have poor grooming and poor hygiene. So appearance and grooming are something that you can observe as soon as you see the patient. Then facial expression. Is the facial expression appropriate or not? Appropriate to the context, appropriate to the speech, appropriate to the environment. And when you change the subject, does the expression change or not? Normally in people it does change, but maybe in a schizophrenia who has constricted affect, will go through it. It may not change. And how does he look? Like, is the patient attentive to what you are saying, or they are apathetic? Apathetic means not interested. Like in chronic schizophrenia, the patient may not be interested in what you are saying. Or he may be indifferent. In severely depressive patient, they are indifferent to what you are saying. So how does the patient look? And the expression, is there elation? Elation will go through it. What is elation? Or there is fear, crying, apprehension, perplexed, frightened. Is the patient angry? Is the patient sad? There is something called, in a chronic depressed patient, something called the omega sign or the Viragut folds. We'll see in the next slide. Or the patient, the expression is blank, like a blank slate. There is no expressions. And how is the eye-to-eye contact? Normally when people talk, they maintain, initiate and maintain eye-to-eye contact. They look at you while they're speaking to you. But how is it? Like in schizophrenia patients, there may be poor eye-to-eye contact. They will not look at you. They'll look here, there, they'll look down. So also in severely depressive patients. Or is there excessive scanning? Excessive scanning means they're continuously scanning the environment, looking here and there, In paranoid patients, they might think that somebody is coming to harm them, or there is some danger in the environment. So they'll be continuously scanning, looking here and there. Like, everything is all right. Is there some hidden camera or something like that? So this is the Viragus fold I was talking about in the forehead. Severely depressed patients, they have this. It is not in all patients, but a sign like this may be indicative of severe depression. Then posture. Posture is the general body posture. How is it? Are they relaxed or are they guarded? Like I said, in paranoid patients, they will be very guarded, They will be on the edge. And or the patient is limp and sprawled out in chair, like the tone. Some patients, there is organic brain syndrome, like the tone may be absent. So are they limp? Or are they sitting at the edge of chair in anxious and paranoid patients, like, always hyper alert and sitting on the edge and very uncomfortable? You can see from the posture how is the patient. Then how is the patient's gait and carriage? Does patient carry himself erect or bent down? In certain disorders, patient will not be able to carry erect, in Parkinson's disease. Many neuropsychiatric disorders are there in which psychotic manifestations will be there, like in Parkinson's disease. So the gait and the carriage will give you an indication. Or it is normal, brisk. Brisk is fast walking. Sometimes manic patients or severely agitated patients, they will have brisk pace. Or slow in depressed patients, unsteady, like I said, in organic brain disorders like Parkinsonism. Poorly coordinated. In schizophrenia, sometimes the gait may be poorly coordinated, So the gait and carriage, how the patient carries himself, how he or she walks, will give an indication of the disorder. Then the body build, asthenic, that is narrow in length, with narrow shallow thorax, with narrow subcostal angle. Sometimes patient who are severely malnourished, or chronic schizophrenia, they are disorganized, they are not eating properly, or maybe they are roaming around on the road or something, so they will be an asthenic build. Picnic is large body cavities, relatively short limbs, and large subcostal angle with rounded head and short fat neck. Sometimes picnic patients, they might also have psychotic manifestations, and the body type will give you an idea about the underlying disorder syndrome. Or is the person athletic? Sometimes patients, they may be excessively athletic also. Like in manic patients, they may be doing excessive exercise, or even anxiety patients, to ward off anxiety, they may be doing exercise. So it will give you an idea. Obviously, the final diagnosis will include the mental status examination and detailed history, but when we are seeing the patient, before you take, talk to the patient, all these things you can look at and have a general idea of what is going on. Then RAPO. What is RAPO? Psychiatry RAPO is very important, because in psychiatry per se, we don't have really any, major blood investigations or, stool or urine investigations like in other branches. So history taking and mental status examination form an important part of our diagnosis. And for that, you need to have a RAPO, means a relationship with the patient. It is defined as a harmonious responsiveness of physician to patient and vice versa. There should be a, friendly kind of relationship, a trust, mutual understanding kind of thing. Patient feels that evaluation is a joint effort and psychiatrist is truly interested in his story. It should not feel like a police interrogation. That is not how RAPO is created. You should have, the psychiatrist should have genuine interest, and the psychiatrist should validate the patient's emotion, and that is how RAPO is built, so that we can get, the full picture, the detailed story of the patient's illness. And then activity of the patient. Behavior and psychomotor activity. What is psychomotor? Psychomotor is goal-directed response involving both motor and psychological components. The brain is directing the body. So psychomotor is like, it is not only motor activity, it is activity directed by the brain. Like in mania patients, panic patients, there will be increased psychomotor activity. They will be agitated, hyper agitated, and in depression or, chronic schizophrenia, they may be very less psychomotor activity. Patient may sit still at one place for hours together. That is called catatonia. And so psychomotor activity will also give you a general direction of, the patient's disorder. And it is divided on basis of quantity, whether it is normal, or there is agitation in severe anxiety, there will be motor restlessness, and or it may be retarded, like I said, there will be abnormal physical and or psychological slowing as a part of any psychotic illness. It may range from lack of expression, slow movements, mutism, or stupor, seen mostly in schizophrenia or organic brain syndromes. Then quality, facial movements, tremors, tics, mannerisms, posturing, rigidity, waxy flexibility, perseveration, stereotypy, gesture, grimacing, restlessness, automatic obedience, echolalia, echopraxia, negativism, compulsion. We'll go into this. Tics are short, sudden, repetitive, rapid movements of small muscles, usually of face and neck. Tics are mostly, they come under neurology, but sometimes tics are associated with psychotic manifestations like obsessive compulsive disorder, and they are treated with antipsychotics, so I have included them here. And they may be simple motor tics or simple vocal tics or complex vocal tics. We'll go into detail like when you are reading the particular disorders. And then posturing is voluntary assumption of inappropriate, bizarre posture. Sometimes schizophrenia patients in catatonia, they will have some, you can see it is uncomfortable, like keeping the hand raised. A normal person cannot keep that raised for a long time. We'll have pain in our arms and all, but schizophrenia patients will voluntarily assume that bizarre posture, and that will continue for a long time. Posture maintained voluntarily or imposed by examiner, maintenance should be at least for a few minutes. I mean, either the patient himself is doing it, or you may raise the patient's hand and leave it. A normal person will bring down the hand, but schizophrenia and catatonia, the hand posture will be continued. Or if there is any rigidity, assumption of rigid posture against all attempts to move. Like you try to move the hand, but there will be, there will be rigid. You cannot move it. Like it is frozen kind of thing. So that is also a symptom of catatonia. Waxy flexibility, also called skin flexibility seria, Wernicke, feeling of uniform plastic resistance as limb is moved. I mean, like how you must have seen wax candle. When you press it, how it feels. Like when you are pressing it, there is a uniform resistance to the act of pressing. In the same way, when you are trying to move the patient's hand, you can feel a uniform resistance, to your attempt to moving. And then perseveration. Perseveration is persistent induced repetition of words, ideas and subjects. Like they will be saying, suppose you ask them what is their name, and they will say their name. So next question will be, what is your age? And again they will be saying their name. They're persevering. The same thing they're repeating again and again. Mannerism. Mannerism is usually performed goal-directed, semi-purpose, repetitive, verbal or motor action. Sometimes some people have this thing of, maybe clearing the throat, or, touching the nose, or, touching the hair. Those kind of things are mannerisms. They are also very much normal. They are seen in normal people also. But if you see along with other symptoms, they are present, so that may be an indication of some disorder. Also, if patient is overly anxious, the mannerisms increase. Stereotype is repetitive, spontaneous, non-goal directed movement which is carried out in uniform moving. Like mannerism, that is at least some goal directed, and stereotype is non-goal directed. There will be some repetitive movements which will be bizarre kind of thing. Like you will think, why is the patient repeatedly, like maybe repeatedly moving the hand like this. So those kind of things are seen in chronic psychosis, schizophrenia. Stereotype also may be motor or verbal, like moving the hand will be motor, and verbal will be saying a word which has no meaning, which is irrelevant to the conversation kind of thing. Then gesture, a mode of non-verbal communication in which information is conveyed by movement of hands, arms, parts of body. Like I'm speaking to you, you can see me moving my hand, moving my face, or, moving my shoulders. Those are gestures. And you have to see if the gestures are appropriate to the speech, like is it appropriate to the conversation. And sometimes schizophrenia patients or, other psychotic patients who might be having some kind of, hallucination, hearing of voices. So they might be gesturing to them, or they will talking to the voice. So you will see who is the person talking to. Obviously you cannot hear the hallucination, but it will give you a clue that the patient is having a hallucination, and that's why he is gesturing in the air, as we say. Grimacing is making facial expression, specific facial expression which is non-goal directed and spontaneous. So sometimes also patients who are having hallucination might be grimacing in response to the hallucination. Restlessness, persistent and generalized diffuse increase in body movements and inability to relax. So this is mostly seen in anxiety patients and in mania patients. Mania patients especially, they will not be able to sit still at one place. You are taking the interview and they will be sitting there, and then they will get up and they will go to some other place, and then from there they will go to some other place. Also in children, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Restlessness is a glaring symptom of the ADHD. So that will give you a clue to the underlying diagnosis. Automatic obedience, phenomena of undue compliance with instructions. This is also seen in chronic psychosis. Like you ask them to do something, and if you ask a normal person, the normal person will have some doubt, or he will ask you, why should I do this? Something bizarre and something. But the patient with chronic psychosis, they will just do it. Or maybe a patient who is, very much depressed, or, kind of thing, they will just do it. They will not question much, or, have doubts regarding the instructions. Echolalia is repetition of a part of sentence or whole sentence told to patient. Like, what is your name? Patient will say, what is your name? So what I am saying, the patient is repeating. That is echolalia, also seen in psychosis. Echopraxia is automatic imitation of another person's movements like clapping, snapping fingers. The patient, they will do as you are doing. If you are doing some gesturing, they will do that gesturing. Negativism is purposeless resistance to all external suggestions or advice. The patient will not do anything. It's like he or she is not able to hear you. They are able to hear you, but it will seem like they are not able to hear you, or you are just not there. You will tell them to do something, they will not do. You will talk to them, they will not look at you. You will ask their name, there will be no reply. So you can know that it is negativism. Compulsion. Compulsion is obsessional motor act. Like compulsion is obsessive compulsive disorder. Compulsions are very common. Most frequent are frequent cleaning. Hand washing, because people think that everything is dirty, so they will frequently hand wash. And then there is frequent checking, like have I locked the key or not, locked the door or not, have I switched off the gas stove or not. So those are obsessional motor acts. Then speech. How is the speech? Is it spontaneous or or is it deficient? What is the tone, pitch, loudness? What is the tempo or speed? Normally a pressure is less than 150 words per minute. If it is more than that, we'll say it is pressured speech, most commonly seen in bipolar disorder manic patient. What is the volume? What is the amount the patient speaks on a particular subject? Like is there proper to and forth conversation, or is he speaking non-stop and you are not able to interrupt? What is the reaction time? You are asking a question, so is he or she answering within a normal reaction time, or is it prolonged, like you are asking but there is no reply from them? And prosody. Prosody is melodic intonation and emotional valence of speech. Sometimes many patients, they will have a different kind of prosody. They will be talking to you in a sing-song kind of voice. So that gives a clue. Relevance. Is the patient answering to what you have asked, or are they saying something else? So that will also give you an idea. And coherence, that is comprehensibility. Is what the patient saying, are you able to understand it, or is it all, the things are going above your head, you are not able to understand. Deviation, it is like, it has many parts. Neologism, like new words or use words in inappropriate way. Like for shoes, they will say foot cover. Okay, so foot cover, you can understand he is talking of shoes, but that is a very unusual way of saying shoes. Or they will use some completely new word, and you will feel like what is this? Is this some kind of a new language or foreign language or something? Echolalia, as I said, automatic repetition of the examiner's utterance. Clang association, speech in which sounds rather than meaningful conceptual relationship governs word choice. Like in many it is seen, they use rhyming words or clang association. Maybe they will say something and then they will say another word which is like a poem. How the poem is there, that this last word should be similar, that kind of speech that is there. Pervigeration is a manifestation of stereotypy consisting of morbid repetition of words, phrases and sentences. Like what you say, they will keep on repeating. Then we come to what is called mood. What is mood? Mood is pervasive and sustained emotion that colors the person's perception of the world. What does that mean? Mood is something the patient's feelings that is sustained. I mean, it doesn't last for minutes or seconds or hours. We ask the patient, how are you feeling? That feeling should be sustained. How are you feeling for the last 1 week? General feeling. Like this moment I may be feeling, agitated. I may be feeling nervous because I am here giving a speech. But that is not my mood. That is just because I am standing here. But if you ask me, how have you been feeling for the last 1 week? I'll say, okay, I am feeling okay. So mood is like fine, euthymic, normal. So mood is something that is sustained and pervasive. It applies to everything. It's not momentary. Like I suppose I see suddenly ice cream in front of me, I'll become happy. But that is momentary because the ice cream is there. And if you ask me, ma'am, how have you been feeling for the past 1 week? I will not say I've been very happy for the past 1 week. It is not so. I'm normal in the past 1 week. So it should be pervasive and sustained. It is not momentary. It does not last for minutes or hours. It lasts for days or weeks. So that is what is meant by that colors the perception of the world. Means how you are feeling, the world seems like that to you. If I am feeling angry for the past 1 week, everything will seem bad and everything will seem disgusting to me. If I am feeling very, very happy for the past 1 week, everything will seem very rosy to me. So it depends. It colors the, how you see the world. So euthymic is normal range of mood implying absence or depressed or elevated mood. Like I said, most of us have normal. Okay, fine, I'm okay, euthymic. Elevated mood is mood more cheerful than normal, but not necessarily pathological. Maybe you have got a promotion, or maybe you have passed an exam, or just completed your exam and you were elevated. That is not always pathological. Euphoria is exaggerated feeling of well-being. Like you are feeling very, very happy. Normally that does not happen. So that happens in bipolar mania. Elation is mood consisting of feeling of joy, euphoria, triumph, intense self-satisfaction or optimism associated with increased psychomotor activity. This is important. Increased psychomotor activity. Like they will be restless, they will be running here and there, and they will be jumping, moving in and out of the room. Just remember, this is not for minutes or hours. This is how they have been for the past 1 week. They are restless. They are very much happy and on 7, and then they are moving about restlessly. That is abnormal. And ecstasy is intense sense of rapture or blissfulness. I mean, they are completely, in another kind of world of happiness. Exaltation is feeling of intense elation and delusion of grandeur. Delusion of grandeur will go into delusions. Delusion is a fixed, firm, false belief that cannot be shaken. So they are feeling grandeur. I have a lot of power. I have a lot of money. That is how they are feeling, which is not the truth. That is how they are feeling. Expansive mood, expression of feelings without restraint, frequently with an overestimation of their significance and importance. Like bipolar mania patients, they will come and say, I am God, or I have so much power, I can save the world, or I can destroy the world, Mehi Vishnu, Brahma, Maheshwaru, that kind of thing. Irritable mood. Irritable mood is a state in which one is easily annoyed and provoked to anger. Like even minor things, they'll say something and if you disagree, it will provoke them. They will become violent, angry, or even without any provocation, they will become very angry. Like they will be thinking some thoughts and then they will become suddenly angry and impulsive and throw things and hit you. So those kind of things is irritable mood. Then dysphoria. Dysphoria is unpleasant, uncomfortable and dissatisfied mood with an admixture of sadness, anxiety and irritable. It is mostly seen in depression. So, mood description in MSA is, it may be subjective or objective, depressed, euphoric, elated, blunted, flat, range. It may be wide or restricted. Restricted to happiness or sadness or anger or placid or fearful. And if it is reactive or not, reactive means you are saying something or you are giving them an information, how are they reacting? Is it appropriate? Is it congruent? Or is it labile? So, we'll go into this. Affect. Affect is short-lived emotions defined as patient present emotional responsiveness. It is cross-sectional and objective. So, we say this in psychiatry, mood is what the patient is feeling and affect is what you are seeing, what you are observing. The emotions on the face of the patient. That is cross-sectional, okay, objective. It is, affect does not last for the last 1 week. It is what you are observing while you are taking the interview. So, how is the effect? Is it congruent to mood or not? Is it flat? Flat means near or absolute absence of any signs of affective expression. Or is it blunt? Blunt is there is significant reduction in intensity of emotional expression. Constricted is reduction in intensity of emotion that is less severe than that of blunted effect. Restricted is mild reduction in range and intensity of emotional expression. Inappropriate. Incongruent, discordance between effective expression and content of speech and ideation. Like the patient might be speaking about his mother's death and he will be laughing. So that is incongruent because he is saying about a sad thing but the expression is of laugh. So that is incongruent. Or labile. Labile is abruptly, it will change. Abrupt, rapid, unstable changes in emotions unrelated to external stimulus. Like the patient while talking they will start laughing and laughing they will start crying. So, it's not because of something you are saying or something the patient is saying. Automatically, spontaneously, it is happening, like a changing picture. So, laughing, crying, talking, shouting, like that kind of thing. Then we come to thought disturbances. The disorder of the form of thought. Form means what? Form is consistent, uninterrupted and organized flow of thinking towards its goal. Like I have been talking since the last so many minutes and what I am saying is there is an organization. I am going towards a goal. There is a goal directedness. But when it is lost, it is called as a formal thought disorder. Disorder of conceptual or abstract thinking. It may be positive that the patient produces false concepts by blending together incongruous elements. And it may be negative. Patient has lost his previous ability to think but does not produce unusual concepts. Positive means the patient will be saying things which you will not be able to understand. It may be word salad, or it may be, tangential derailment, or it may be kind of a negative. The patient is not saying anything. The abstract thinking is disordered because obviously you can see the patient has a blunt effect and, less speech, but he will not be saying anything. So Cameron said asyndenesis is lack of adequate connections between successive thoughts. Because whatever we are saying, there is connection. There is connection between my one sentence and the next sentence, and then connection between second and third. If I say disconnected things, you will not be able to understand. Metonyms is imprecise approximations in which a substitute term is used instead of a more exact one. And over-inclusion is inability to maintain boundaries of problem and to restrict their operations within their correct limits. Like suppose I am saying I am talking to you about mental status examination. If I start, talking about mental status examination, then about a particular patient, then about the patient's case history, then about other patients in my ward, so that will be over-inclusion. I am including more things than absolutely necessary. Goldstein said thinking becomes concrete because of loss of abstract attitude. Why are the patients saying like this? Why are they having formal thought disorders? Because they have lost the abstract attitude. We all know, we all can speak abstractly. We can think abstractly. But patients, especially severely disorganized schizophrenia or psychosis or manic patient, have lost that ability. Snyder said derailment is one thought slides into another. Like we say a train has derailed. That means what? It has derailed from the track. In the same way, when the patient is speaking, the speech, it has derailed. Like it is not going on track, it has gone off track. Substitution is major thought is substituted by a subsidiary one. Like I may be thinking, the patient may be thinking something else, but they are saying something else. Omission is senseless omission of a thought or a part of it. So you will not be able to understand because in between the patients will not say a few things. Fusion is heterogeneous elements of thought are interwoven together. And reveling is disordered intermixture of constituent parts of complex thought. In fusion, like two thoughts, they are mixed and they become one thought, and reveling is there is disordered intermixture. Then there is disorders of stream of thought, disorders of tempo, retarded thinking, that is slowing down of train, flow of thought. Associated features will be lack of attention and concentration, inability to make decisions, no clarity in thinking, dull fuzziness in head, seen in depression and in manic stupor. And flight of ideas, this is very common in bipolar mania. The flow of thinking is accelerated and directionless, in which connections between successive thoughts appear to be due to chance factors, that is verbal association, clang association, and final goal is not reached. Like for example, the patient will be speaking something, and then there will be, suppose the phone rings in the background. So suddenly the patient will start talking about the phone. And suddenly a child is crying, then the patient will start talking about a child. So that is how of ideas, it is because due to chance factors and not because they are logically connected. Circumstantiality is pattern of speech is indirect and delayed in reaching its goal idea, thinking proceeding slowly with many unnecessary trivial details, but finally goal is reached. Like I will ask you, so what did you eat today? So you will start with, ma'am, I got up at 4 a.m. and then I brushed my teeth and then I saw outside it was raining. I became very happy and then I went to the mess, but the food was not ready, so I waited for some time and after 1 hour they gave me food, maybe bread and cheese. So you see, I asked you what did you have for breakfast. You could have just said bread and cheese. But from where you started? From getting up in the morning. That is circumstantial details. You ultimately told me it is bread and cheese. I got my answer. But there is a lot of trivial unnecessary details. That is circumstantiality. Even in normal persons it is seen, but it is also seen like a good clue in psychiatric disorders. Tangentiality's final goal is not reached and patient loses. Question. Like if you never reach at food, I went to the canteen and then I saw my friend there and we talked about something and then I went to his room and then I came to college and in between my bike it had a puncture. So I never knew what you had to eat. Okay, I never got my answer. So that is tangentiality. Incoherence is pattern of speech that is essentially incomprehensible at times. Like I cannot copy that because my speech, I cannot try, even if I try my best, I cannot be incoherent. Incoherent is mostly seen in delirium and chronic schizophrenia. You don't understand the speech, what they are saying. Disorders of stream of thought may disorder of continuity, like perseveration, like we have seen before, repetition. Thought block, interruption of train of speech before a thought or idea has been completed. They will be saying something and mid-sentence they will stop. Echolalia we have already seen, repeating what the doctor is saying. Disorders of possession of thought is thought alienation. Possession means what? That this is my thought. Okay, we all know, like whatever I am speaking, this is my thought. We know that. Thought alienation is patient has experienced that his thoughts are under control of an outside agency or that others are participating in his thinking. They are like thoughts are controlled by others. Criteria of thought alienation is external agency, passive recipient, like I am the passive recipient, I am not the owner of the thought. It is against my will. It is thought insertion. The patient knows that thoughts are being inserted into his mind, recognizes them as foreign. Or thought broadcasting, patient knows that he is thinking, everyone else is thinking in unison with him. These are seen in mostly in schizophrenia. Disorders of position of thought may obsession, it is involuntary, ego-dystonic, recurrent, irrational thoughts and impulses or images that cannot be eliminated from consciousness. Like the repeated thoughts that, everything is unclean, or repeated thoughts that I have left the door open, I have not locked it. And patient, it may be thoughts or, images also. And compulsion is a pathological need to act on an impulse that, if restricted, produces anxiety. Repetitive behavior in response to an obsession or performed according to certain rules. Like, okay, everything is dirty, so I must clean everything. I have not locked my door, so I should go and check repeatedly. So the thought is the obsession and the action is the compulsion. And if I don't do the compulsion, I will have anxiety. Rumination is prolonged, inconclusive chain of thought. Mostly thinking about, particular subject for a long time. Mostly seen in depression. They ruminate about it, like I'm worthless, I'm useless, those kind of thoughts. So, what is the content of thought? Obsession and compulsion, as we saw. Ideas of hopelessness seen in mostly depression. An attitude characterized by an untoward and unfavorable expectation from self and environment. Ideas of worthlessness, feeling that one is good for nothing and cannot tackle problems of life with due skill. It is frequent underestimation of one's talent, knowledge and capabilities. Or there may be suicidal ideas, homicidal ideas, depersonalization, derealization, ideas of reference and delusion. So these are the disorders of content of thought. Delusion is judgment which cannot be accepted by people of same class, education and race and period of life as person who experience it. Like this is the definition by Stoddard. By Jasper it means there are three components. They are held with unusual conviction. I mean, you cannot change those thoughts. Not amenable to logic. If you say with logic also explain that this is not possible, they will not believe you. Like if a many patient says, I am God, and you will give him logic. Why you cannot be God? You cannot be God because you are a human. You cannot be God because you do not have a lot of power. But they will not understand logic. And absurdity or erroneous of the content is manifest to other people. Other people can see that their thoughts are absurd, but the patient himself or herself cannot see that. So Hamilton says a false, unshakable belief which arises from internal morbid processes. It is easily recognizable when it is not keeping with person's educational and cultural background. Like other persons in the, other people in the patient's environment won't be believing that thought. It may be primary delusion, delusion not occurring in response to another psychopathological form such as mood disorder. Secondary delusion is false belief is understandable as arising from some other morbid experience like because of mood state. Like if there is a delusion of grandeur, we will know that this delusion of grandeur is because of the mania. So delusion description in mental status examination, it is false. What is the content? Is it delusion of grandeur, feeling, sense of power, or is it delusion of infidelity, feeling that the partner or spouse is unfaithful? Delusion or multiple delusion, whether it is elaborate, there is a whole story behind the delusion, it is systematized. Like I know my neighbors are against me because they went outside that day and they went to buy some weapon to kill me. So that is kind of systematized. There is a systemic, there is a story, whole story about the delusion. Whether it is primary or secondary to other mood symptoms, and where it is mood congruent. Like in mania patients, whether it is delusion of grandeur, there will be mood congruent. Like I am happy or I am exalted, that's why I am having delusions of grandiosity. Or mood incongruent, like I am happy but still I am paranoid. I think others are trying to kill me or harm me. That is mood incongruent. Then after these thoughts, we come to the perception. Perception, there is illusion, that is misinterpretation of perception. It occurs to all of us. Like we are going in a dark and there is a rope on the ground and we may think it is a snake. So it is called an illusion because actually some stimulus is there and we are misinterpreting it. Hallucination is perception occurring without external stimulation. There is nothing there. There is absolutely nothing. There is no voice. There is no rope. Nothing. But still if I can see a snake or I can hear someone talking to me even if nobody is there, that is hallucination. Depersonalization is patient feels detached and views himself as strange and unreal. Like I am not in my body, I am not who I am, those kind of feelings. And derelation involves alteration in sense of reality of outside world. The world is not as it seems. This is how the patients feel. So hallucination, Esquirrel gave the definition of perception without an object. Jaspers had a false perception which is not a sensory distortion or misinterpretation and occurs at same time as a real perception. Slates gave three criteria. First is perception like experience in absence of external stimulus. Perception like experience which has full force and impact of real perception. Like it will appear as real to them as any real object. The voices will appear as real as if actually somebody is speaking to them. Percept like experience that is unveiled, spontaneous and cannot be controlled. This is important. Our thoughts, we can control it. But these hallucinations, they cannot be controlled. If I say voice go away, it will not go away. The patients cannot control the hallucination. Functional hallucination is the stimulus causes hallucination, but it is experienced as well as the hallucination. The stimulus and hallucination both are experienced. Reflex hallucination is stimulus in one sensory field produces hallucination in another. Like somebody sees a color and they can feel a particular taste. So that is reflex hallucination. Extra combined hallucination is patient hallucination which is outside the limit of sensory field. Otoscopy hallucination is phantom mirror image. Patient sees himself and knows that he is not just visual hallucination but also kinesthetic and somatic sensation are present. I am seeing this is me and I will see another me. Like I can feel that body also. Not only I am seeing another me, I can feel also that yes, like I have the sensations also. So it is difficult to understand, but that is what is phantom mirror image. Like there are two of me. Negative otoscopy, patient look in the mirror and sees no image. Seen in severe schizophrenia, organic brain syndrome. Internal otoscopy is patient sees his internal organs. Like patient will actually see, hallucination is not imagination. They are actually seeing. Like their perception is real. For them, it is real. They feel as if they are actually seeing. Auditory types is elementary noises like some like these kind of noises or some clanging noise or bell ringing noise or partially organized music. Sometimes patient hear music which is also seen in normal people. Like sometimes you may, when the night is very still, even you may hear. So that is not exactly pathology. What is the pathology is completely organized voices. There will be conversations, there will be running commentary, like how in cricket there is a running commentary. In the same way when the patient is doing any activity, there will be running commentary. And there will be criticism, there will be third person hallucination, like two people will be discussing about the patient. So those are pathological. Visual hallucination will be elementary, formed or aperceptive. The elementary is flashes of color or something like that. It is mostly seen, before epilepsy, before the seizure comes, or it may be formed, well formed, like seeing something like it is real. Tactile is touch. It may be elementary, haptic, hygric, thermic, kinesthetic, like in your muscles and joints also you can feel, or visceral or synesthetic, like in your internal organs. Mostly we see kind of auditory hallucinations and visual hallucinations in schizophrenia. And also in somatics, like delusional, there will be delusions, somatic delusions, like insect is crawling on my body, my internal organs are liquefied. Such kind of hallucinations can also be seen in psychotic patients. So hallucination description in MSc, perception, false, what is the timing, awake, whether the thing is when they are awake or hypnagogic or hypnopompic. Hypnopompic are hallucinations that occur just when you are about to fall asleep or just about when you have got up from sleep. They are normal. So what is the modality? Visual, auditory, tactile, gustatory, somatic. Description, intensity, what is the distance, from the hallucination, what is the content, how many persons are there, is it very clear, or is the hallucination feels like somebody is controlling you, and is the patient aware that the hallucination is not real, that is insight, or if there is any precipitating factor, what starts the hallucination, or does it start spontaneously, and what is the patient's attitude, is the patient fearful, happy, sad, angry, how does the patient feel about the hallucination? Then we come to attention. Attention is patient's ability to attend to specific stimulus without being distracted by external stimulus or internal stimulus. And vigilance. Vigilance refers to a more basic arousal process in which the awake patient can respond to any stimulus appearing in environment. When you are speaking, is the patient attentive to what you are saying, or vigilant, aware of the environment? Sustained attention is called concentration. It is the ability to maintain attention to a specific stimulus over an extended period, affected by factors like intensity and frequency of stimulus, environmental stresses, emotional factors, and lower IQ. Evaluation of attention. Observe. Subjective rating of 0 and to highly distractible to 5 fully attentive. Just observe. When you are talking, is the patient listening to you? Is the patient answering to your questions, or is he looking here and there, restless, agitated, moving around? That is, you observe the attention. Then take the history. Then the digit repetition test. You tell the digits and the patient has to repeat. Tell the patient, I am going to say some simple numbers. Listen carefully, and when I finish, say the numbers after me. Present digit in normal tone of voice at rate of 1 digit per second. And numbers should be random without natural sequence, not two group digits in pairs. Begin with the 2-number sequence and continue till patient fail to repeat all numbers correctly. Scoring is patients of average intelligence accurately repeat 5 to 7 digits without difficulty. Like I'll say 2, then the patient has to say 2. Then I'll say 2, 10. The patient has to say. Like that, 7 up to 7 will go. And see how much the patient can correctly say. Repeat. Evaluation of sustained attention is a random letter test. Consists of a series of random letters among which a target letter appears with greater than random frequency. Patient is required to indicate whenever target letter is spoken by examiner. The direction for this test is, tell the patient, I am going to read you a long series of letters. Whenever you hear the letter A, indicate by tapping the desk. Read letters in normal tone at rate of 1 letter per second. So I'll say A, tapping will be there. Then D, E, Q, R, A. There. So, I'll see if the patient is actually listening, sustained attention is there or not. Then scoring. Average person should complete task without error. Serial 7 subtraction test. In this way, in this test, we ask the patient to count backward from 100 by 7, like 100, then 93, like that. So, result will be influenced by obviously intellectual capability, education, calculating ability, rather than pathological process. Because sometimes the patient may not have any psychiatric disorder, but he may not be educated, right? Or even if he is educated, he may not be good at math. So, you have to take those things into consideration also. Then, memory. Memory definition is a general term for mental process that allows the individual for later recall. There are 3 stages: information received and registered by particular sensory modality held temporarily in short-term memory, working memory. Okay. Then storing or returning information in more permanent form, long-term memory, like from where did you do your schooling, like that kind of thing. Recall and retrieval of stored information. There is short-term memory, there is long-term memory, and there is recall of memory. Memory is useful only when you can recall it, right? Immediate memory is used to recall a memory trace after an interval of few seconds, evaluated by digit repetition. Like I said, I'll say 1, patient has to say 1. I'll say 5, 2, the patient has to say. Those kind of, that is immediate memory, seconds. Recent memory is the patient's capacity to remember current day-to-day events. Okay, what did you eat today? What did you eat last night? Where did you go yesterday? Who came to visit you in the hospital? That is recent memory. Evaluation is orientation to time, place, and person are actually measures of recent memory as the test patient's ability to learn these continually changing facts. Where are you? Which day is this? What time is